Morning, Utah News. Although 9 years has passed since the Vietnam War, but our economy is stuck in a predicament. Government is trying to do nothing and hope that the economy will recover it by itself. But it is obviously not. It went even worse in these 9 years.
However, the Vietnam War has already maintained for 20 years, but what are the impacts to our world economies?
Okay, to maintain and stabilize a country, the government have two options to use. First is the government expenditure. Government expenditure includes the purchase of goods and service. For example, a fleet of car for the government server, or buying the aircraft for the national defenses. Government expenditure is a fiscal policy tool is because they have the power to raise and lower the real GDP. Okay, and next, by adjusting government expenditure, the government can influence the economic output. They have a direct relation between the government expenditure and the aggregate demand. For example, like when the government expenditure increase, total spending increase directly affect the aggregate demand increase. And the other way, when the government expenditure decrease, it will affect the total spending decrease directly, aggregate demand will decrease as well. Okay. In addition to a primary effect for government expenditure on the economy, this expenditure multiplied through the economy as it affect the business who is selling goods or service bought by the government. It's also called a multiplier effect. After they consume, the consumer go on to spend their paycheck they earn from the business. It's stimulating the real GDP even more.
Today, Utah News, we are going to talk about fiscal policy, and it's our pleasure to get to invite Professor Tam to talk about the budget deficit and also the budget surplus.
So first of all, thank you, Ms. Ili, for the invitation and the introduction. And for that question, we actually have two types of budget, which is the budget deficit and also the budget surplus. So first of all, I will talk about what is the budget deficit. Budget deficit happen when the government expenditure exceeds the tax revenues, which means the government spend more, then it collects money through the taxations. So now I will give an example for Ili and also the audience to have a clearer perspective. So now I will give an example to let the host and the audience have more clearer perspective on what is budget deficit. So let's say the taxation collected in UK is 400 billion euros, while the government spending is actually 410 billion euros. This will incur a deficit of 10 billion euros, and this deficit is financed by the government borrowings. So this will directly increase the national debt in this case. There are several reasons why the budget deficit is existed in the economy. Firstly, the government may spend more on the spend more on the projects to increase the job opportunities, while the government may also cut the taxes, so there will be a slightly loss in the tax revenues. And there may be a economic recession in this case where there are fewer people will be working and paying taxes. So at the same time, the government will need to pay more on benefits, which is the transfer payments, and this transfer payment unfortunately is not covered in UDA financial syllabus. So I will not talk about it further about that. Yep.
So what if the government spending is actually lower than the tax revenue?
In this case, the budget surplus will be formed, and the budget surplus is the opposite of budget deficit. This happens when the government collects more money into the taxation that is spent on the government expenditures. So now I take back the example I mentioned earlier, but I will twist it a little bit in order to fit in the budget surplus conditions. So now let's say the taxation collected in UK is actually increased to 500 billion euros, while the government spending remains at 410 billion euros. So in this case, this will occur a surplus of 90 billion euros. And this surplus can be used to repay the national debts, which makes the overall budget to look more healthier because the national debt has been lowering in this case. There are also several reasons why the budget surplus is existed in the market. So let's say the government now have cut back on its spending, or the government also raised the tax in order to collect more money from the people through taxes such as income personal tax, value added tax, or in this case in Malaysia is called good and service taxes. So at the same time, the government will be spending less on the benefits, which is the transfer payments.
So thank you, Professor Tam, to explain what is a budget deficit and also budget surplus. Up next, we will be talking more about the fiscal policy, and we already invited one special guest to talk more about it. So stay tuned for more.
Alright, now I'm going to talk about the second use is tax. Tax are the primary sources used by the government to finance government expenditure. And tax are the fiscal policy is because the change in tax affect the average consumer income and consumption. Directly, it also affect to the real GDP. When tax increase, the purchase power of consumer decrease. Directly affect the aggregate demand decrease. So by adjusting tax, the government can influence economic output, and tax can be changed in several ways. Firstly, marginal tax rate can be raised and lower. And secondly, they can be eliminate, attire, or modify the tax rules.
So welcome back to our new half hour show. We get to invite the 7th and the 1st Chinese Prime Minister ever elected in the 15th general election of Malaysia, Tan Sri Dani, to be our special guest to talk about fiscal policy.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
So let's have Tan Sri Dani to talk about fiscal policy. One of the fiscal policy.
Alright, one of the fiscal policy. Let's just focus on the expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, expansionary fiscal policy is a form where you increase in government purchase and you decrease in the tax revenues. Yes.
So what's the goal of fiscal policy?
Oh well, in this case, actually every country that actually implement fiscal policy, I mean the expansionary, they have three main goals. The first one is to close down a recessionary rate, okay? Because whenever the economy is on the downfall, that's what we call about recessionary gap, okay? Then the second one is stimulate the economy. It's the same idea. When your economy is on downfall, that's what you have to do. You have to boost up your economy. Then lastly is to decrease the unemployment rate, yes, of the country.
So Tan Sri Dani, can you please elaborate more about what is closing down recessionary gap?
If I were to do so, then I have to use the AS and ED model. So it's actually, you can look at it. We have a long run AS, which is the natural rate of the real GDP. Okay. Then we have a short run AS. What we look into here is how we're gonna push up, okay, our economy to close up the gap from 81 to 82. 82, which is the one that reach the natural rate of GDP. That's when your country's economy is the most stabilized state. That's what every country has want to do in their country. They want to close down the gap and reach the natural rate of GDP in every economy all the time.
So in the fiscal policy, you talk about increase in government purchase and also decrease in the tax. So what do you mean by that?
Okay, we have to look at the AD model, which is the AD is equal to consumption, investment, and also the government purchase. because all of these are correlated, where your government purchase would directly affect your consumption, your investment, and also your AD graph. That's what we have been talking since just now. The AD graph has to be near to your real natural rate of GDP. So what can government purchase? You take another example. Your government purchase a large, tremendous sum of amount in money into the citizens. So your citizens normally, they will purchase goods and services, right? So this will purchase from the regular business where your AD graph would shift up because your economy is boost. All right, your citizen has been buying things from for goods and services. Then secondly, investment. There will be the government purchase. They invest money into the firms so that the firms could further invest the money into different type of things ranging from pencils to multi-billionaire aircraft carrier. That's how the economy will be boosted up in that case.
So how about decrease in the tax?
Decrease in tax actually is the same tool of using the government, increasing government purchase. So how about Professor Tam? Can you elaborate on the decrease on tax?
Sure. When the government decided to decrease the tax or cut down the taxes, let's say the personal income tax will lower down 1 to 2%, or the corporate tax will also lower down 1 to 2%. This will make the individuals or the citizens have more disposable income. Hence, they will increase their ability to consume things,
Higher purchasing power.
Yup.
Okay.
So that's the same thing for the firms, which when they have lesser tax to pay, the cost of doing business will also lowering down. Hence, they will have more money to invest into the business or other business.
Okay, well that actually relates to what I've just said, the increasing of government purchase, which brings us back to the AD model. That's what we want to do. Everything is related, so we could increase the consumption of citizens. We can increase the investment of firms, and that's what the lastly is the government purchase increase. Then lastly, your AD will increase. AD increase, then your economic will boost. There's high economic growth. That's how good it is of expansionary fiscal policy.
So is there any side effect on using this expansionary policy?
Expansionary fiscal policy, well, we don't really regard it as a side effect, but then when you don't realize it, when you increase your you use your expansionary fiscal policy too much, you will increase your AD way over the natural rate of GDP. So that's what happened when you need to use your contractionary fiscal policy to cool it down the economy. Alright, so normally you cause inflation in that case.
So now we have Professor Tam to introduce what is contractionary policy about.
Alright, so contractionary fiscal policy is used to pull down the economy when the economy is experiencing a high level of prices, which means the price of the goods and products is too high for the consumer, and so it is used to decrease the aggregate demand in an economy. So since government expenditure is one of the aggregate demand, the government can actually use this component to control the aggregate demand, to bring down the aggregate demand to the natural rate of RGDP or real GDP. And furthermore, increases in taxes are also classified as a contractionary fiscal policy. Since raising taxes on households gives them less disposable income, which will leads to less consumption or more saving in this case. And consumption is also a component of aggregate demand. And in addition, a decrease in saving by households serves to raise real interest rates, which in turn decreases the quantity of investment in an economy. Since investment is a component of aggregate demand, it again follows that increasing taxes decreases the aggregate demand.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that's all from me.
This actually reflects on how different it is between contractionary and expansionary fiscal policies.
Yeah, every policy in doing in the expansionary fiscal policy is a different side.
It's a totally different side. So that's why when expansionary, you need to what do you call it, boost the economy. While when overboost, it becomes inflation in your case, right? So that's why we use contractionary to cool down the economy. Yes, ED. Alright.
So Tashri Danny talked about undertaken during recessions to increase the level of economic activities, and the government actually spends more than it actually collects in the taxes. But for the Professor Tam, it says that during the contractionary is undertaken to pay down government debt and to cap with inflation. Government spending is actually lower than tax revenue. So this is what fiscal policy about.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.